Many people ask me how to start a money claim, whether you can start a money claim online, and whether the amount that they want to claim is too little or too much. But if you're just joining our community, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you receive notifications of my new videos. Currently, there are several ways to start a money claim. You can still use a paper claim form, and the court will issue the claim, and then you can either ask the court to serve the claim form on your defendant, or you can serve it yourself. Either way, it must be served within 4 months of issue. Far simpler, however, is to start the claim online, and there are currently 2 systems that allow you to do this, one of which is in a beta testing stage, which takes you through a short questionnaire to see whether you are eligible, and the second is the more long-standing money claim online, which you can still use if you prefer to do so. There's no minimum amount that you need to be claiming in order to be able to start a claim, although the court fees will reflect the amount that you want to claim. If you are only claiming up to £300 and you fill in a paper form and ask the court to issue the claim on paper, there's a filing fee of £35, whereas if you do it online, that reduces to £25. There are then some staggered court fees, and the last fixed amount is for a claim between £5,000 and a penny and £10,000. In this case, issuing a claim on paper is £455, whereas if you issue it online, it's £410. Then anything between £10,000 and a penny and £100,000, you will either pay 5% of the claim amount if you issue on paper, or 4.5% if you issue online. Anything above £100,000, you cannot issue it online, but then anything above £200,000, there is a cap on the fee of £10,000. On the new system that is currently in testing, the website will take you through several questions to determine whether or not your claim is suitable to be used on the new system. Otherwise, you may need to use the money claim online system. Either way, it's going to ask you for details of you as the claimant and an address for service, that's where they will send documents, details of the defendant and any address that's associated with the defendant. And it's very important to get these right, because once you've been through this process, you cannot change these details without permission of the court. Of course, if there's a simple mistake, then it's likely the court is just going to give you permission anyway. But for example, if you want to claim against 2 separate defendants, but you only use one defendant and you go through the online system, then you will need the court's permission to add another defendant later. Now, with either of the online systems, it's going to ask you for a brief description of the claim, but it's also going to ask you whether or not you want to reserve the right to send further particulars, further details, to the defendant about your claim. This, in full, is what we call the particulars of claim. In other words, it is the facts upon which you rely to support your claim. Many people think you include all of the law in this particulars of claim, which is not usually the case. Only when there's some overarching law, for example the Consumer Rights Act, you may say at the outset that the Consumer Rights Act applied. That just gives the reader of the particulars of claim an idea of what the claim's about. But for most circumstances, your particulars of claim is going to be a factual chronology of what has happened, the relationship between you, how that relationship or the contract, for example, has broken down, why you say they owe you money, how much money they owe you, and so on. One problem that I've come across as a barrister is when a litigant in person has filed a claim online, they've filled all the form in and said exactly what happened, but then the defendant instructed solicitors who criticised the format of this claim, which essentially was the format that the claim came out in the first place. Now, when I read the claim, it was quite clear what the claim was about, even though it didn't conform to a normal particulars of claim that we as barristers would draft, but it did set out the details of the claim. The reason, in my view, that the website is set out to produce a claim like this is because it allows individuals to file the claim without the need to instruct lawyers, which can, of course, become very expensive, particularly if the cost of instructing a barrister to draft a particulars of claim is more than the amount that they are claiming in the first place. And there's a very good reason for this, because if a claim is just for money alone, and it's not more than £10,000, then you cannot ordinarily recoup any of your legal costs beyond the fixed costs of issuing the claim and costs for things like the hearing itself. For example, if you were to issue a claim, let's say for £500 for money owed, and you instruct a barrister to draft that claim for you, and the barrister charges you £500, then your claim is likely to be allocated to what we call the small claims track, which is what a lot of people think of as the small claims court. So it's not really a small claims court, it's just the county court. But it is a particular type of claim, a small claim, that is heard at the county court. A small claim is typically heard within a couple of hours, whereas, for example, a fast-track claim is usually heard in 1 day, which is taken to mean no more than 5 hours of court time, and a multi-track claim is a much more complicated claim that runs more than 1 day. So the important bit about being allocated to a small claims track is that you cannot ordinarily recover any of your legal costs beyond the fixed costs, that is the cost of issue and let's say the hearing fees and things like that. So in this scenario, even if you win and you are given judgment for your £500, you won't ordinarily be able to claim back the £500 that you've paid to your barrister to draft the claim for you. There is an exception within the rules which is rarely engaged where the defendant has conducted the litigation badly, and that allows the court a discretion to award certain costs, and of course the court does retain a general discretion in any event. Once you've filed your claim online, within a day or so, the court will give it a unique number. That is your claim number. And if you've done it online, the court will ordinarily serve the claim form on your defendant along with a response pack. The response pack essentially gives the defendant the option to admit some or all of the claim or to deny the claim. Now, the defendant has 14 days within which to admit the claim, file a defence to the claim, or what we call an acknowledgement of service. So they acknowledge the claim, but then they have a further 14 days, so given a total of 28 days in which to file a defence. If the defendant fails to file an acknowledgement of service or a defence, then you can request a judgment in default. But let's say the defendant files a defence, the court is then going to send out something called a directions questionnaire, which will give the court some information to decide which track to allocate this claim to. For example, even if it's amount of money that would ordinarily be allocated to the small claims track, that is not more than £10,000, if it's a very complicated case or lots and lots of witnesses, the court may still allocate it to a fast track. After these questionnaires have been filed, the court will come back again with a notice of allocation. So let's say the court's allocated it to the small claims track, it will then be listed for a hearing at an appropriate court. So there's just a brief overview of how to file a money claim. If you want a much more in-depth look at the online system, I'll put a card above where you can link to a video where I run through the online system and explain in more detail how that works. I'm very interested to know what you think of these online systems. Let me know in the comments, have you used the online system? Have you found any problems with it? Are there things you like about it? And in the meantime, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.